Welcome to our Tiger Success Series webcast today. We share leadership training that builds trust, interdependence, genuineness, empathy, risk, and success in the workplace. Here's our host, Dianne Crampton.
Welcome, everyone. It is so good to see you here today. How are you doing? Let me know. Give me a thumbs up or say hi in chat. Oh, that's wonderful to see. Today, we are discussing accountable decision-making in community collaborative teams. If you missed our webinar on building accountability for decision-making teams, the playback link is available in our Learning Center and in our Tiger 6 Principles social media channels. When it comes to building accountability for decisions on community collaborative teams, these are unaffiliated teams composed of government, nonprofit, education, and perhaps business members that come together to collaborate to produce outcomes for a community benefit. And I project that we will see many more of these collaboratives developing for climate mitigation and economic development in rural communities in the coming years. So today with me is Tiger 6 Principles licensed consultant, Megan Fries. Megan is the owner and operational strategist at Frenzy to Freedom, a consulting firm in Central Oregon. She is a licensed facilitator who specializes in creating efficiencies with finance operations, teams, and processes so that her clients can put more of every dollar earned toward mission fulfillment or profits. She facilitates decision-making and creates implementation plans to ensure impactful change. Megan works with nonprofits and facilitates community collaboratives. Welcome, Megan. It's great having you with us today.
Thank you, Diane. I'm so excited to be here. This is a topic that's very important to me personally and professionally, so thank you.
Well, and it's so good seeing you too.
You too.
You know, when it comes to my mind in facilitating community collaboratives, is that gaining everyone's contributions in the decision-making process can be tricky. When some community team members have more resources and financial clout than others. So as a team developer and an expert team developer, how do you develop both a sense of equality and accountability in teams with members from different organizations?
It's a really good question, and you're right. It is sometimes very tricky. I found that making sure that you are known as the neutral party, as the facilitator, is one of the most important things. And not only to say that, but to make sure everyone understands and feels that you truly are neutral and want to hear their opinions and have them be a part of the conversation. Oftentimes there's at least one part of the organization or a organization that's convening the group. And sometimes that creates a little bit of confusion about who owns the group decisions, but each partner owns those results. And that means, taking that extra time to build rapport outside of those collaborative groups on occasion. Secondly, establishing those written operating principles or group norms ensures that what often people think is obvious is documented up front and center. So the group is, and each partner in the group determines and agrees on what those operating principles should be, and make sure that they're each ready to hold each other accountable and to live by those operating principles.
So, it seems to me, oftentimes these community collaboratives go on for a period of time. It's not just a one-time event. It's actually a growth opportunity where more information is consistently brought to the table, right? And I would think that when you have a government agency, they need their people too. So it would seem to me that there's opportunity for people to rotate in these positions. So some people might be rotating out, some people might be rotating in. How do you onboard a new community member from a disaffiliated member of the collaborative so that they can enter these existing teams with current decisions and ground rules without really losing a beat? So you're not going back to ground zero with each new person that comes onto this collaborative.
That is also a great question. And I think I have to pull back to those operating principles and group norms again. It's such an important set of documentation that establishes how successful a group is. It often takes a lot of time and energy when you're first forming to figure out how do these groups work together and how do we make sure that we're living by these principles. And most often in these collaborative groups, there are government officials, there are people who've been elected. So having the opportunity to refer back to some piece of documentation that's proven to be successful and have, a portion of the folks have been there before, and a portion of them know that this is an established group that has success. So not only those operating principles, but knowing what are the successes of each of those. Because these partners, they have an individual role, they have individual agendas, which, might be part of this related topic we're getting together on. But we're bringing it together and really bringing it home that we're able to make better progress and better success together with the role of the group and what the conversation is going to be.
Do you ever hear from any of the members with regard to, let's say you have a member that rotates in, and you have somebody that's rotating out? Do you ever hear anything from their superiors with regards to, commitment that they see that maybe they don't even see in their own organizations when somebody is rotating in and out of a project?
Yes.
Do you ever hear things from people with regards to the accountability that you are able to build in that onboarding process?
Yes, 100%. Each partner that comes to the table has been invited there because of their position, whether the topic is on youth and encouraging youth opportunities in the community or business opportunities within the community. Each of these organizations operates on its own schedule, its own agenda, has its own makeup. Some of them are, for-profit, some of them are governmental, some of them are nonprofit. So they all have very different ways of operating. And we actually have had a couple of different elected officials rotate out, or people who have moved on to different positions within economic development. And it always comes back to, figuring out, as they've hired the new person within that role, what's the best way for us to start these conversations and bring them into the fold. And every single time, with the principals, the managers of these particular people in the organizations, they're so grateful that we have an opportunity and a way to onboard them and tell them a little bit about how important their role and their organization's role in these conversations are.
Well, when it comes to onboarding, as we take this part of our conversation a little deeper, are they just referring to policies and written documents? How do you, as the team developer and facilitator, bring them up to speed? Is it a one-on-one conversation with you? How do you do this so that there's continuity and a real sense of accountability and ownership?
Usually it's a combination of several things. So depending on who the person is and their role in the community, we may suggest multiple meetings with different partners for them to really understand how the strategic partnerships and the relationships work. But as the facilitator, I always make sure to have that conversation and give them a little bit of insight about how we get together, how we work together, and to reinforce, that I am neutral and I want their opinion. We want them to be a part of this process. And that's really the only way that we're able to make great decisions. We don't want to get 2 weeks or 2 years down the road on a project and have somebody come up great ideas that were never brought up before because they were afraid to speak up. So we really encourage and reinforce the documentation that we have, but also we live it, So every agenda, we actually post a link to those operating principles. Sometimes it's very easy to, think that's something that it's obvious that, we should all be nice to each other and we should all share information. But, sometimes we all need those reminders and those reiterations. And then we have examples of, good things that are happening and also reminding each other that, these are their decisions. These are their successes. It's not this, external group that, has nothing to do with them.
That's excellent, because I would think, with any existing team, having those operating principles working so that people can rotate in and out is really important. And I think this also translates to, let's say, cross-functional teams in one organization where you have different political structures, potentially silos, all of these things developed between departments so that these same sort of decisions can be made. And I think the fact that you are a neutral facilitator in these community collaboratives is a real advantage, but also I think the politics in existing organizations that have cross-functional teams, and then the difference between the psychological safety because of that organization's culture might be a little bit more difficult. And I'm just going to throw this out. You can agree or disagree than it is in a collaborative where people are representing different organizations for that psychological safety. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I would say that that's a really good assessment as far as the cross-functional teams. And I have a good example, actually. So a collaborative group, oftentimes they're nonprofits or they're, community based organizations, which, have an internal team of people working, with them within the company. And then they support and convene these different conversations, these collaborative groups. So it's very hard to have a collaborative group that one of the team members within the organization, is in charge of and sponsors without having the same kind of collaborative nature within their internal teams. So it's a great, example for them to see, we all have ways of talking with each other, of working with each other. How do we communicate? Do we, let emails sit in the inbox for a while, or do we put urgent in the subject line if we need an answer right away? These things that we do to get work done every day, it's there, whether we've documented it or called it out or not. So oftentimes creating more effective teams and more effective decision-making collaboratives, it's calling out what are those details that have led to our success, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. Well, and you brought up the topic of the group norms and ground rules. In our recent webinar, we discussed the importance of developing group norms and ground rules that group members contribute to, like you do with your collaboratives, that keeps conflict down and progress moving forward. So I'm curious, what are some of the most valuable methods that you used to achieve that equity and accountability in such a diverse group?
I think making sure that everybody knows that they own those decisions. So it's not just about sitting back and when you don't agree, not speaking up. So I think the speaking up portion is one of the most important things, because people, often, unless you, make that extra effort and go that extra step to get their input, to make time and space for them to have input, they oftentimes, can sit back and just kind of let things unfold. But we really need participation to make sure that we have all the information to make the best decision that we can.
Well, and that makes perfect sense. Unfortunately, we're coming close to the end of our conversation. So I want to thank you for sharing these insights, and I have so many more questions for you. I hope you come back to join me again.
Yes, I could talk to you for hours, Dianne, about collaboration and and the value. So thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Well, it's wonderful to have you, and your insights are so helpful and emphasize how community collaboratives are so important for solving complex problems that one organization would be, I think, hard pressed to handle alone, right? So to recap, community collaboratives are composed of different organizations that come together to involve and innovate or resolve complex community problems. The key is keeping members collaborative rather than competitive, so solutions are created with a felt sense of equity and ownership for the outcomes. So this conversation has been very valuable for me. And if you also found it valuable, please text agree into chat. And if you have a personal question for Megan, you can reach her on her website at frenzy2freedom.com. That's frenzy2freedom.com. In our next short topic, I'm focusing on how to apply dissent into decision making. You won't want to miss this. And I want to thank you for your time and attention today. Tell your friends about our conversations and subscribe. The link is below. So until I see you next time, I wish you the very best ongoing continued success.
Thank you for attending our webcast today. At Tigers, we've helped conscious leaders build more cooperation among employees and collaboration between departments for over 25 years. Tell your friends about our topic today. They can join us regularly by subscribing to our newsletter on the web at corevalues.com.